Welcome to the Ask Dad podcast by Soul Bliss Empire with Rachel and Jim. This is the podcast where science meets spirituality, and our mission is to expand consciousness. You have arrived.
Hello and welcome back to Ask Dad. I'm Rachel and this is Jim, aka Dad. And today we are going to be talking, we'll start off talking about the world as a lucid dream. And so I'll just start briefly with my experience with lucid dreaming. So I don't know our viewers what your experiences are with lucid dreaming. I know not everybody can do it. And I haven't been able to do it my whole life. I would say it would be more as I got older and probably more connected spiritually. I believe there's a connection there, that the more I've connected there, I can dream more lucidly. So what lucid dreaming is that in the dream, you can actually control the dream and you know you're dreaming. And so I've had dreams where we have been fighting something, I don't know, and then I just am like, okay, well, I need something to fight with, and conjure up a gun. Or am like, okay, I need to defend myself and have like magic shoot out of my hands. But it's my choice to do so in the dream. It doesn't just happen. You're not just watching it like most dreams where you're just kind of seeing it unfold and observing it mostly. So in those dreams, you actually can control it. And so then once I figured out even what it was, I was like, oh, well, let's play around with it. So then once I'm like conscious of the fact in the dream that I'm dreaming, and I then go, well, what if I do this? And so one thing I was able to change about my dreams is that when I fall off of things, I would usually always wake up, but I don't now. And I think it's because it was like facing a fear of some sort in the dream. And so because in the dream, I'm like, well, I don't have to die, I'm dreaming. And so I think that I would always wake up because I was afraid of dying from falling. And so now I just fall and it's no big deal. Anyway, so that's just kind of how lucid dreaming works. But I do think there is a connection between spirituality or maybe not spirituality is maybe not the correct term, but awareness and connection to the universal intelligence and dreaming. I think that we do a lot of work in our dreams on the astral plane because I've definitely had dreams like that where I'm fighting some spiritual warfare in the dream. So bringing that back to Earth and reality, let's talk a little bit about how the Earth, or is the Earth, ask the question, is the Earth just us dreaming lucidly? And then when we go to sleep, that's when we're actually waking up. It gets really convoluted when you try to start wrapping your head around that sort of possibility and what is real and all of that. But let's dive into that a little bit and see where it takes us, because it's an interesting conversation, and I think the more you're connected, the more you can expand your mind by talking about this type of thing, and connect more, rather, not the more you connect, but you can connect more to the universal intelligence by speaking about things like this. And part of the idea here is we want to demystify the mystical, and so this is kind of a mystical type of topic. So let's dive in and go from here. What are your thoughts on reality, the world being a lucid dream?
Yeah, so demystifying the mystical, it's because mysticism really only lives in the mystery, right? And that's what we're about, using science and using shamanic wisdom and using ancient wisdom and just even some of the head knowledge that we can get to understand it, right? Just like you're in your lucid dream, it's like, oh, I'm lucid dreaming, what can I do, right? You want to start to experiment with it and start to master it and have it as a helpful part of your life. And I think where we're going to end up with this conversation, and I'll just sort of preface it now, and say that really the most practical thing that we can do is learn how to have a high vibration within ourselves. And a lot of times people will say this just, to be happy, just having that happiness within ourselves instead of, the anxiety, the depression, the critical voice in our head that's causing us to be down or to feel down about ourselves. And there's so many of these sort of thought and spiritual aspects that want to grab us and bring our vibration down. And the whole goal is to maintain our vibration higher, right? And so a lot of times people will, they talk about their guides. Their guides will help them. Of course, it all sort of revolves around meditation and being in a state of consciousness that is conducive to a higher vibration. And higher vibration is just simply things like love and gratitude and appreciation. Those are higher vibration things. Even then you get into ecstasy and bliss. And then you have the low vibration, which is the fear, the anxiety, the depression, anger, and those lower vibrational aspects. And so really in a very simplistic way, it's like the test that we're going through right now, or the thing that we need to learn. People talk about schoolroom earth. And the thing we want to learn in schoolroom earth is how to keep our vibration high, even though we have low vibration, a lot of low vibration, pulling us down and seemingly to compel us to that we have to, we'd be silly not to, feel depressed, which kind of sounds backwards in a way, but it is an inversion, right? It's an inversion of the energy, and there is power in the inversion. It's like the mathematical ratio, what they call reciprocal, right? Which is a fraction. 4/1 is, 4. When you flip it, all of a sudden it becomes a quarter, right? So it's that reciprocal or that inversion of the energy. And so we want to have an upright and high vibration, and these things tend to bring us down. So when we're talking about lucid dreaming and is this world a dream, one thing that makes me think about is the idea of the holographic universe. And a hologram is really unique in that it's like a picture, but a picture, if you just take the picture and rip it up into little pieces, then the only way to get the picture back is to piece it back together like a puzzle. Whereas a hologram, each piece of the hologram has the whole picture in it. And that's the difference of a hologram. And so that's why people talk about the holographic universe, so that even, every molecule in the universe reflects the whole universe. So that's the idea of the hologram. So it's not that we are a hologram or that we are a simulation. It's just that it has some of those characteristics. So it becomes a metaphor for us to try to understand. So if we're a holographic universe and everything, and so that we're, a little piece of this universe, right? But we mirror the whole universe, even in this little piece that is us. And so that's an idea of, so if we're in it, so if this reality is a dreamlike reality, that's just in terms of time, it just seems very slow, right? It's like it's everything's slow motion, like super slow motion compared to like a dream. When we're dreaming, everything just happens like this, right? So the only difference is the time frame. And of course, time is, that's something that we don't understand completely. And even in our own selves, you say, well, if we're having fun, time flies or time can drag. So even our own perception of it can change depending on our activity. And then I'm hearing now, teachers, different things I'm hearing from different teachers is that time itself is like has an energy structure to it. And so we're when you understand, so that then you start to think of time, of course, instead of being just a linear time, now we're thinking about fractal time, right? Three-dimensional time, and fractals, of course, are hologram-like also, in that as you zero in on one part of the fractal, the whole fractal repeats and it opens up again, and then you zero in, and instead of getting smaller, it just opens up into another aspect of the fractal. And so I think we can think about our consciousness is like that, because in addition to being a holographic universe, it's also a conscious universe, an aware universe. And so it's like we're living in this energetic awareness. We're a small piece of that reflects that. And so whether we're in a dream state of consciousness, or we're in this state of consciousness, there's parallels in terms of how they react. And the thing about one of the main takeaways from that is that in your lucid dream, which is so fun, is that you can say, oh, I'd like to be able to have a light beam weapon, boom, 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 and there goes the demon or whatever is attacking you is blown up. And we have that ability in this consciousness to manifest reality, and to whatever we concentrate, focus on, then we can bring that into a material reality in what we loosely term this physical reality. Has that same quality. It's just that the time frame is much longer. So how does that resonate with you?
Yeah, that time is such an interesting topic, and the contrast between the real world and dreams is very interesting. And I have a hard time, and I think a lot of people do, just because it gets so esoteric, I guess is possibly the word, where it's like the world that we're in seems so real, right? But then so do dreams.
Yeah, when they're happening. Yeah, and then you come back, and then it's like, oh, that was seems so strange now. So it's like, trying to flip it in my head, being like, oh, well, if the dreams are actually the real thing, and then the what we're living in here is the dream. It's like, well, it's way more fun in the dream world because you're just playing around. There's nothing to lose, right? And that's what it feels like. There's nothing to lose. So it's like, if we can bring that aspect of consciousness back with us a little bit to this world, that more playfulness, that more playful energy rather, and like, oh, let's try this. I think that we would have a lot more success in our real life. That's a good point.
Yeah,
because it's a game, right? It's a game, and let's in a way you want to take it seriously, but in a way you don't want to take it too seriously.
That's right.
And,
yeah,
and that's a common thing too. It's like, oh, don't take yourself so seriously, right? That's kind of it's kind of counterintuitive in a way.
Yeah, and it's like part of it's the control, and we can get into a whole topic there about the control, or being realistic, or any of those things. But it's like, well, that's no fun though. It's no fun to be real. Well, most of the time to be realistic. Like, I would like to have energy shooting out of my hands, like in real life, not just my dreams. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's it's a little bit hard for me to like put it into words, because it's so even dreams are kind of hard to talk about, because I don't know, I just don't feel like I have the correct language for it. But yeah, time, going back to the time, it's such a fascinating subject, because it's like, what is time? Nobody can really tell us what it is, but we need time in order to relate to this world. Like,
right.
That's the purpose of time, I believe, is that it keeps us oriented to this world. Because if we didn't have that orientation, then we would cease to exist, I think, here. Maybe not everywhere, but just here, particularly on this planet, or planets that have time. I don't know. Yeah, it's a high level subject, so it's tricky to put into words. I haven't talked about it a lot.
Yeah, I've read. It makes me think of a book. I read Julian Barber.
Okay.
It talks about the end. He's a mathematician actually, and he has a book called The End of Time. And there's Ilya Prigogine has a book called The End of Certainty. And and then there's another one that's the Time Paradox by the same fellow that wrote the Lucifer, Philip Zimbardo. He wrote the Lucifer Effect. And the Lucifer Effect was a groundbreaking psychological effect or a study that he did in a university basement, and basically proved how easy it was for people to become, when the rules were set up in such a way, they had a prison, right? So you had your prisoners and then you had your guards, and it didn't take very long for them to just fall into being cruel and like anti-human. And that's why he calls it the Lucifer Effect, because they became like devils. And so much so that they had to just stop. And this was just like in the basement of a university, and it became a very famous experiment. And he wrote this book 30 years later, after he had time to like digest it and think about it. And it was so profound. Like, it was just so amazing, the result that he got. But he also wrote a book called The Time Paradox. So yeah, kind of an interesting guy for sure. But it's interesting that comes to mind, because the other really interesting thing that ties in with this is the Mandela Effect, right? And I would think probably most of the people listening to this would have at least heard of the Mandela Effect. And it's so much so, but if people haven't heard, basically it's where people will remember something. Like, for example, there was the famous Snow White Disney story, and the witch would come up to the mirror and say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And then the mirror would say that it was Snow White. And so, of course, then she got jealous and she had to kill Snow White so she could be the most beautiful, right? That's the premise of the story. But now in this timeline, it's magic mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, right? And people like me, and I don't know if it's just my generation or like where the timeline broke off, but it's very common. There's millions of people that still remember mirror, mirror on the wall, right? Then I've got a book on my, you remember that, mirror, mirror? I
remember mirror, mirror. Yeah, magic mirror sounds strange to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a book that said that it's in print that I can pull out here, and it'll say mirror, mirror on the wall. And that's what's called a residual. So, but now the accepted thing is that it was magic mirror and that it was never mirror, mirror, right? And there's hundreds and hundreds of these types of things. So much so now that they have a conference on the Mandela Effect, and now they've given it a scientific name, which it's called mass memory distortion. They call it MMD, and so it's but it kind of comes into this discussion as to how malleable is what we consider a physical objective reality. How malleable is it, and how flexible, how much can you bend or twist, or it seems like it's the boundaries of that is starting to expand in a big way.
And it brings into maybe question isn't the right word, but it brings human memory into the conversation as well, and how easily that is changed. Even when you think you remembered it a certain way, like how easily things can be added in your memory, and like how easily it can be changed.
Right.
Just because our memory is so fallible, right? Like but yeah, I don't know. And then with all the mind techniques out there like mind control, hypnosis, anything like that, memories can be implanted too. So it's like, it becomes this really big conversation, where it's not just about timelines and that part of it. It's about human memory too, right? And then that's how people can argue it away as well. I was reading about it today, and I think that seemed to be, for the few articles I was reading, that the general consensus was that, oh, it's just human memory isn't very good. So that's how we have these.
Of course. Yeah. And there's been studies where, they'll have, people set up in different, or the famous one is, people look at a car accident, and then they'll, be reviewed, interviewed afterwards, and to give the details of the accident. And, there's a lot of discrepancies in terms of the angle, or even their emotional state, their connection to the accident, or their lack of connection. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that they've proved that can affect memory. But this is a little different in that and that's true. And that's, when you talk about this, of course, memory can be very, unreliable. People forget, people remember things that, that didn't happen. But what this is that this, what they call a mass memory distortion, is where you have millions of people that remember it a certain way. And now, if you look at it and the history of it, it never was that way. And then you can say in this timeline, and of course, then as soon as you say that, it's like, what do you mean in this timeline? Like, there's different timelines? Like, how can that possibly be? And so you have this idea, and then so now you have this idea of, all of the, what is time and how can that change? And is it linear? Is it fractal? And these kinds of things but it does impact the ability, or the idea of manifestation, of, the law of attraction, and having that ability to have and to be the creator of your own world and your own reality, and that, which is a very ancient idea. It's in the Bible even, right? It talks about, to ask and you shall receive, and if you ask in my name, it'll be given, and when you ask, believe that it's happened. And if you believe that, if you have that, the idea is the feeling, if you actually feel the emotion of receiving what you've asked for, you have it. That's a definition of faith, right? And so it goes, so it's not something that's completely foreign to us. So that it's there, right? It's faith. It's, believe and you'll receive it, right? Ask and you shall receive. So, but now we're getting, we're starting to, but that's a very, in and of itself, that is mystical, right? How does that happen? But what's happening is that we've had people with, doing hypnosis, that would get into Dolores Cannon and her work with her quantum healing hypnosis technique. And the reams of information that she got from 30 years of doing this. And it makes me think, in her book, Convoluted Universe, which is, a complete mind blower, is that, she was getting information from one of her person under hypnosis that there was, entities that had basically put the whole planet to sleep for a week. And then because they had to change the frequency of the sun, because the idea is that the earth is going to be advancing into another dimension and bifurcating like a cell, dividing into two parts. And one is going to go up into this higher dimension, and the other, is like, who knows, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? We don't need to know, right? But if you have again, it comes down to that personal vibration. As the earth vibration, right? Gaia Sophia, as her vibration, this goddess, vibrates and basically sloughs off everything that's not of love and of joy and of bliss and gratitude, as that just gets shoved, gets just taken off. Then we're going to go into this other dimension that they call the shift. And for years, people have been talking about this shift into 5D, right? And it's like, well, what is that? And again, we want to take away the mystery. Let's understand it. What are the practical things that we can do to, to get ready for this event that a lot of people would just think is complete craziness. And yet, on the other hand, they'll still go to church and believe in faith. Right. So this convoluted universe, she was talking about that she heard this person, which is almost like a channeling kind of a thing, saying that they put the earth to sleep. Like all the people in the earth thought that they just went to bed one night and woke up the next morning when, much more time had passed, and they needed that time to do this frequency upgrade on the sun. So we're talking about, beings that are changing the frequency of the sun, so this is getting out there. And so if something like that can happen, then something like a Mandela effect could easily happen as well. And so the Mandela effect could just be like a sign or an evidence of something else happening that shows us that our reality is not the firm objective reality that we in our limited minds think it is. And I thought of the analogy of like the leaves falling in autumn. And so you're walking, in the park, and you see all these leaves scattered everywhere. And of course, we know it's autumn and the leaves fall. But just think if you had lived in a world where there had never been any change of seasons, right? And everything was always green in summer. And then all of a sudden the leaves start to fall. And you'd be like, what's happening? Right? Something's changed. And I think that's the place that we're at. The Mandela effect is like the leaves on the ground. And we're going, there's leaves on the ground here. What's going on? But it's a season change. Or to carry the analogy further, it's a dimensional shift, right? We're changing the season of our time. And it's come to that place where we need to have a high vibration of love and gratitude, and we need to leave off all the fear and hatred and violence to be able to, to go with the new earth. Like in the book of Revelations, it says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and all the old things had passed away, right? And people have interpreted that different ways, but it applies here. And so what if we're actually changing a season, and it's the first time that it's happened in our recorded history, which is only 6,000 years.
Yeah,
right?
Our recorded history, yeah.
And maybe it's a once in a 500,000 year cycle. Who knows?
Sure. Yeah.
It doesn't really matter, does it? How long the cycle, or maybe it's, I know there's the galactic cycle is 26,000 years.
Yeah.
And then the Hindu teachings talk about the yugas, right? The Kali Yuga and the different, the different earth cycles that take, 24,000 or I guess maybe 26,000, depending on how you do it. There's these huge cycles that, that we're completely ignorant of because we have been made ignorant because of lack of education. And I think this is really the big takeaway, is that there's this huge amount of knowledge that's coming out, and there's much more to come of where we are and what's happening. And I think as this knowledge comes out, it's going to become more evident that we're going to go, yeah, well, of course, that's what's happening. Of course, those are the leaves on the ground. Yeah, of course, our season is changing. And we need to, we need to be happy. We need to learn how to be happy within ourselves. Like that seems like a really obvious choice to make, doesn't it? And it's as simple as that in a way, just why don't we just have love and be happy and, live like that? John Lennon said, let's give peace a chance. We can always go back to war and violence and starvation and and pestilence if we want to, but why don't we give it a chance? but it's really in a larger sense, it's not going to be just us giving it a chance. It's going to be, it's like, that's the personal choice we make. But I think there's a larger choice where, where, like I say, where, Mother Nature is going to is going. she's not staying here, right? In this, place where there's the fear and the violence and the lying, right? And in a very interesting book was written in the 70s. It was called Christopher Columbus and Other Cannibals. And in that, they talk about how that when Christopher Columbus came to the Americas, the indigenous people there, the First Nations people, looked at that and they looked at each other and went, Wetico. Some people will pronounce it Wetico or Wetico. And they knew, like the other person would have gone, oh, yeah, Wetico, yeah. And of course, what Wetico means, or Wetico means, is kind of it means cannibalism at its basic, but it's a broader concept that can also mean just energetic cannibalism, like so slavery, lying to someone, manipulating, basically taking away somebody's personal sovereignty, right? Not recognizing that they're a little holographic piece of source that's there, that's sacred, right? That their life is sacred, running right over that in what we would call a psychopath, right? Someone that has no empathy, right? And just go, oh, I'm hungry, I'll eat them, right? Would be the very lowest and most base aspect of that. But even just the idea of creating a monetary system whereby people become rich and other people become debt slaves is Wetico as well. And so we are living in a Wetico system, right? And we've been asleep to it. And so it's that and the fact that it's been intergenerational, actually part of our character structure. And that's where when now we see fascism coming in, and fascism isn't a political party or even an ideology. It's a political exploitation of the fascist character structure that the authority, the willingness to bow to authority and to give up our personal sovereignty is in a way kind of hardwired into our minds and into our character structure. And that's why we have to attack or remove and advance our spirituality to a point where we can get out of that low vibrational character structure that powers that be know we have and are using to control us. So that's where so it's like we have that Wetico in us, right? It's inbred, even though we don't know it consciously. And as we awake to that and we deny that and throw that off, then our personal vibration comes up, because Wetico is the lowest vibration, right? It's so low. Like, it's to take advantage of someone is so low, right? That it's that lack of empathy, lack of compassion, just taking advantage of someone just so you can have more wealth is such a low vibration. And as the Western world has been very much affected by this Wetico, and we have to, that's our job, right? That's our business that we have to be about, is to throw that off and to open up into, and then when we do, I think these other things will start to make more sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's where a lot of people struggle, like myself included, is those structures are so foundational in us. And like you said, most of us aren't even aware of them. And so to change them is to change our identities, or it feels like that at least, right? And so our ego will stop at nothing to not allow that to happen, right? And so that's where the fear comes in, and we often get stuck trying to do that, trying to throw it off, right? Because once we see it, it becomes difficult because we're so ingrained as who we are. But we've seen a huge upheaval in the last 2 years, right? We've seen how sort of Earth's shedding, and it's been reflected in our lives. And I think that's how we move forward, is to simplify everything. Like you said, be happy and share love. Like it is simple. But I think we need to simplify back to that, because we've become so busy and like there's just so much in our lives, right? And so it's hard for us to have space to do anything else, to do anything different, right? There's no space to bring anything new in. I was listening to Teal Swan. I really enjoyed the way she puts things out there. She's very real, and she was giving predictions for 2022, and she's like, that's the theme of 2022 is simplify.
Okay.
And so like to me that, pardon?
Yeah. No, I'm just, that sounds good.
Yeah. And to me, that's not just like maybe decluttering your house. That I feel like that can be part of it, but it's decluttering your mind too. It's decluttering maybe your social media feed, or just not using social media as much, right? And yeah, I always go back to getting out in nature and all of that, right? Like that's simple, but it's so nourishing.
Yeah, nature has a high vibration.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So it's I think that's the path that is going to be the most successful for everybody, is to simplify and to let go of the things that aren't helping us get to that higher vibration. And getting clear on what those things are in order to let go of them.
Yeah, and so I think some of these mysterious things like the Mandela Effect, or lucid dreaming, even doing shamanic journeys, which is also a type of lucid dreaming. And it's very similar to because I've done shamanic journeys, and when you describe, the way I picture a lucid dream is very similar to the shamanic journey. Although the shamanic journey is a little bit more of it's kind of a combination of, I suppose lucid dreaming is too, where you interject something and then something else happens. Yeah. And then it's sort of a give and take back and forth.
Yeah.
And And so these are different ways of using our conscious state, right? Putting our conscious state into a different realm. And I've heard of meditators, that really get deep into meditation, and then they'll just be walking down the street, and all of a sudden they'll see like a giant fly, or a giant beetle, walking down, and they just realize that they're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And
that's like the Mandela effect on crack. Like
yeah, like it's happening right there.
Yeah.
And what they say is that, okay, that's reality. So it kind of loosens their hold on what we, tightly hold to as objective reality. It's like, oh my God, this is reality. And then they see this over here and they go, well, that was pretty darn real too. And it's like, okay, which one's real? It's like, okay, well, maybe they're equally fluid.
Yes.
Right. That's the conclusion they come to, is that they go, oh, reality has a little bit of fluidity to it, more than we thought. Mm-hmm. And you're just starting to recognize it. So you're kind of just removing, the impediments, right? These obstacles that we've accumulated, over, because this goes back, this goes back 6,000 years. This is a massive intergenerational, programming and hardwiring that we're up against. Mm-hmm. And this is what we have to, this is where the work, comes in to start to remove these things. And we can go, oh, okay, that's not what I thought, but this is good. We can go, okay, I can create what I want in this world. Okay. All right, let's give that a try.
Right.
And let's be happy, and let's not give in to the fear, right, that's around us. It's all through the news, and even today when I was going out and I had to do some errands, it was interesting. I could feel this tension in my body, this anxiety. I would normally call it like anxiety, but I wasn't anxious about anything. You could say, or like this foreboding, or it was like a pressure. It was just a pressure I could feel inside, like a spiritual pressure. And I'm just going, and of course, everywhere you go, you have to put a mask on, and there's just this, it's like this, and this mass psychosis, or what they're called mass formation psychosis or mass psychosis. Really what it is it's a manifestation of that wetico that we have in us, and that powers that be know how to trigger. Well, they just know that if you put a population, and the more you scare people, the more that we will hold on, like that will have an effect on us. And there's something in us, in our character, that will grasp onto that, and then we'll call out to the government and say, "Oh, save us." And of course, the more the government centralizes and works with corporations, that's the textbook definition of fascism. But it's a slippery term, because it's like you say, it's not a political party, even though, we relate it to a political party, which was the National Socialist Party in Germany, which was abbreviated and called Nazi. Right. That's the Nationalist Socialist Party in the German language is abbreviated to Nazi. That's all that is.
Right.
Nazi has kind of taken on this term of, this feeling of its own, but it was just a political party at the time that used these techniques, and who also was really into the occult. If you remember, if you look at your history, Himmler was like, he was the head of the SS, and the SS had those like skulls, right? Yep. And they were like, they sent teams into Egypt and to dig, archaeological digs, and try to find books. And, they looked at the ancient knowledge and secrets and mystery schools, because they wanted to understand how to tap in to this character structure where people would give over their, would submit to their authority, give over their power to the state. And then that is what they used to almost conquer the world.
Right.
So they used it as, they basically weaponized our character structure that's been in us, for our recorded history, and attempted to weaponize that and then to take over the world and to seize political power.
Wow.
So, and we term that as fascism. And of course, they say, and fascism was really just a term that Mussolini used in Italy, where they had a bundle of sticks together. And of course, it says stronger together.
Right.
And fascism is just a bundle of sticks. And of course, when you put a bundle of sticks together, it's much harder to break than one stick.
Yeah.
That's true. We are stronger together. There's no doubt, everything's built on a little bit of truth, right?
Right.
But what we don't understand, because there was so much mysticism in our culture, right? Through Catholicism, and even the Protestantism didn't break through the mystery. It got, as it progressed, you got into Pentecostalism, and people would speak in tongues, and they say, "Oh, that's mysterious. That must be the power of God." And, maybe it was sometimes, and maybe it wasn't sometimes, it's hard to say. But it's a mystery, right? That has been used against us, and is being used against us again. But this time there's this mass awakening that's coming out and going, no, we don't need to be in a mystery anymore. We can figure this, in a sense, we can be aware of what's going on, right? It's a matter of a state of consciousness. And if enough people get a hold of that, and of course, that actually was really interesting, is that there was this, I saw, again, this, a military insider, which I can't verify, but it's, again, it's something that's, to me, when I hear this stuff, even if I can't verify it, I listen to it, and then I see how it fits in. And they talked about Project Looking Glass and Project Stargate, which I've heard quite a few different times from different sources that these things were real. Okay, it goes along with like the Philadelphia experiment, which has this kind of urban myth. And then it gets into remote viewing, which has been declassified now, right? The CIA and the Army intelligence, it was Russell Targ, the physicist, who felt compelled, and he made a documentary and he put it all out there. You can look at it on Netflix. And he basically said, no, remote viewing, here's the papers. It's been declassified, right? And he wanted it declassified because he felt that people needed to know. It was basically his life work, and he was a physicist, right? And there's other people like Hal Puthoff, and there is so much knowledge out there that's been classified and put behind these barriers and hidden away in these, Lockheed Martin and Boeing and all these ones that do defense contracting for DARPA, and they're all under, they shoved it over into the private sector where it became proprietary, corporate knowledge, and so you couldn't get it with a FOIA request, and black budgets and all that stuff, and it's starting to come out, right? You just can't hold it back forever, and this is what is demystifying all of this stuff. And so if you've got remote viewing, that just kind of opens the door, doesn't it, to, the fluidity of time. People can remote view into the future. And that was this project Looking Glass. And this guy was bringing up, so because I know all these other background things, when I hear somebody say, as a whistleblower or an insider coming out going, yeah, this is what I saw, this is what I did, this is what my day-to-day job was, I go, okay, yeah, could be. It's a distinct possibility. You have to consider it, right? You have to consider it. And so what he was saying is that in this project Looking Glass is that they were trying to, use this technology to look into the future, right? And then create it to hold on to their political power, right? Like playing a chess game, and you knew all the chess moves, right? You're going to win, right? But what happened was it blew their mind, was that the more that they did because they would say, well, here's what's going to happen, and so here's what we should do, and then as the game went on, it came to a place where they realized, because they were running computer simulations, right? They said, well, what if we do this, right? And they run that in, and then could plug that into the Looking Glass, and then the Looking Glass would show it out and say, well, 79% probability this could happen. But then other things would happen, and they realized that it didn't matter what they did, the outcome was the same. And the outcome is that people will become aware of what is going on. We will become aware that it is a character structure within our own selves that is wetico, right? That is low vibration, that they're using to pull us down and to control us. And once we get a hold of that, each individual person can discharge, and with a little bit of work, a little bit of help, a little bit of it helps to have a little bit, a mentor, a guide, a teacher, a coach, right? This is like the Olympics of awareness, and we all need a coach, and we all need to get on a team and go, hey, let's do this, because that's the that's what this Looking Glass technology said, is that there's no way to stop it. And once the awareness hits, then they can't manipulate it anymore. And they said that's what terrified them. That's what threw them into a panic. And I thought, wow, that's kind of encouraging. It's weird, that they had all that technology. Like, I didn't know that. But when you look at all the other stuff that's happening, you go, okay, good. Yeah, people are going to wake up. People are waking up. And and our earth the vibration is getting higher. Like, there's so many people that, can just know that. And there's different ways that people know that it's, so I think that, this is, so it comes down to, our doorway into this was lucid dreaming, which I think is just one of those types of things that are like the leaves on the ground going, hey, I can do this. What's up with that? Just kind of like, oh, things are changing. There's this shift that's happening, and the shift is the awareness and the ability for us to leave the low vibrational, cannibalistic, wetico vibe that has characterized our civilization for millennia. And now is the time that we are going to be moving past that, and everybody has the free choice to participate or not.
Yeah. That's yeah, it's very encouraging. And that what I've always found fascinating about you and me is that we have always, or very almost always, come to the same sort of conclusion, like that, the awakening part of it, and that it's inevitable, through different channels. It's like,
Yeah.
I do not read the same things or listen to the same things you do, but yet we come together and basically talk about the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, no, I figured that out too, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that is incredibly, it's really cool, but it's like,
It's powerful.
it is, yeah. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot of people talking about this same thing. I recently listened to something called The Prophecy, and this lady had received a prophecy in 2007. And even just her talking about how back in 2007, how there were not very many people of her caliber. So she's clairaudient, clairvoyant, and so she can see things other people can't, right? And hear things. And so back then, like, not very many people, but now there's so many people that say they have those things and
Yeah.
spiritual gifts, right? There are many more people that. So to me, that is a sign of our awakening, right? There's just a huge. Obviously, there's probably people that aren't so trustworthy out there, but again, like, that comes back to our own personal discernment and in our sovereignty, having that power. And that, like, I just want to remind everybody that you have that power of personal discernment, right? So it's like listening to us or hearing somebody else, and sounds pretty fantastical, some of the things that we're talking about, right? But listen to it with an open mind. That's all we're asking. And maybe go corroborate it elsewhere. And then you get to decide if it's true or not. We're not telling you this is true, this is the only way. Like, that's the beautiful thing of the power of discernment. And that's where we need to come back to, is that trust in ourselves, that trust that we can look within and be like, this is true, this is not true. And respect other people's truths, even if they're not true for you. I was listening to Boris, I don't know his last name, but the Prime Minister of England.
Oh, Boris Johnson.
Johnson, yeah. He was because they were talking about reopening everything now, right? And one of the things he said,
pandemic's over, forget about COVID.
Yeah. He's saying we are going to trust the people of England to do the right things. Like,
yes.
You should have done that from the beginning.
Yes. We are not helpless.
Yeah. Exactly.
We can figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Right? That's the pioneer spirit, right? I mean, people that came out to the West, like, we're from the West, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're fourth generation born in British Columbia.
Right.
Right? Your daughter is the fifth generation in our family to be born in British Columbia.
Yeah.
Right? Our forefathers pioneered over here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And pioneers didn't have government assistance.
No.
Right? It was you got your own place built, you got your own job thing, income coming in, you got your own food on the table, and you figured it out.
Yeah.
Right. That's how this part of, and at some point, that everybody, that had to happen. And so we have that ability to do that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And we just have to remember to trust in our power and in our ability to do that. And that's, I know that's where it can be really scary. But just being open to that possibility, right?
Yeah.
Just start there.
Yeah. We're pioneering into a whole new dimension.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I really feel the momentum, on a large scale, the momentum is building. And so you can take encouragement from that too.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Yeah. And that seems to be the message that I'm hearing all over the planet, from many different people, astrologers, other spiritual people, even just what you were saying there with the simulations that they were running, that the end result is people awakening. And that is the consensus that all these people seem to be coming to, is there an inevitable future? Is that the vibration will rise enough and that the earth is going to separate, and the people that have chosen not to go that way, not to be high vibration, will go separate from the people that are are higher up. And that sounds scary to be separate and leave people behind. I've heard that there won't be any memory of each other, so there won't be that loss. But I'm excited to go high vibration.
Yeah, right. That's my choice. So,
Yeah.
And I've heard people, I've heard it say that people will choose to stay, and they go, and that's okay. That's their path, right?
That's right.
Right. And they may just, incarnate somewhere else on some other world that has negative duality and work whatever out that they need to work out. It's going to be okay. It's just that this is what's happening, and there's no stopping it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's only a choosing.
Yeah. And if you don't choose, then and nothing happens, and you probably will end up on the lower vibration, but who knows?
Well, I don't know. Not choosing is a choice.
That's true too. Yeah. Well, also this is great conversation.
Indecision is a decision.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but it's like it's doing it from a victim mode, right? Like I'm not making a decision because I can't do it. So, but like in reality, you are, because
it's a fear. Yeah, it's based on a fear that you don't want to commit or decide, but then everything is a decision, because wherever you're standing is a choice, right?
Yeah.
You can choose to step, or you can choose to not step.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, this has been an awesome discussion tonight. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Do you have any last words for our audience? Anything else as we wrap it up here?
No, I would just say that if anybody wants to follow what we're doing, go to soulblissempire.com.
Yeah, and you can find us on Instagram as well at Soul Bliss Empire. There are 2 places, and of course YouTube, where this is. So great, perfect. Thank you so much. We thank you all our viewers as well for watching, and we will see you next time on Unsaid. Good night.